Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Two Gays, One Episode. I'm Alex,
And I am GoatJesus.
and today we're going to be covering episode 15, as well as episodes 13 and 14 of Neon Genesis Evangelion,
Yeah.
which one of these is probably one of my favorite episodes of the whole series, maybe as a contender for my favorite episode of the whole series.
Yeah,
And that's episode 15.
this episode 15 is like in my top 3 easily, but
Which is weird because nothing happens in it. Like,
yeah, it's the lowest stakes, arguably the lowest stakes episode of the whole show in a lot of ways. And but I appreciate that about it. I think it makes it really different because Ava is a pretty action oriented kind of series for the most part. So but first we're going to have to talk about the other 2 episodes.
yeah, we just want to recap the whole show in at least in passing.
Yeah.
I was going to quickly say about episode 15. The episode description is also just like Masato goes to a wedding. Shinji visits his mother's grave. Like, it's the most like non-entity. It's just like the most strange plot description.
So
Anyway,
episode 13 is essentially about this angel infiltrates Nerve headquarters, and it's a very Ritsuko kind of centric episode.
yeah, we open with Ritsuko and Maya just kind of chilling in the computer room.
Yeah.
This is another Akio Satsukawa episode, by the way. He loves writing these sort of sneaky, low-key, character-driven episodes, which I love. So, I mean, I can't get enough of those.
Yeah, we get some excellent fan service as well this episode for the 3 minors in the show. Yes. As
Well,
they're
I guess, if you're into that, I guess it's fan service.
No, I'm just joking. Anyway, they're in the showers and they're kind of out of commission. This is an episode that has to do
one jail sentence coming to you next year.
But no, it's good in the sense that we established that the Ava pilots are indisposed and both figuratively and literally, and the adults have to kind of deal with everything. This is like the adults taking matters into their own hands, and this is the probably the first time that we no I was gonna say this is the first time we get it. No, that's not true. It's good to see this since the day Nerve stood still, or the day Tokyo 3 stood still. I mean, that we kind of see like the adult characters in an active role in an action set piece, because it is pretty rare, I think.
Yeah, that episode's the opposite, actually. It's the adults are unavailable and the kids have to kind of solve the problem themselves, almost.
I think weren't the adults kind of just like, get the entry plug.
Oh
ready
yeah, they have to
go.
get the Ava ready manually, but they don't have the adults to tell them what to do. That's the main thing about that episode.
Yeah, but this is kind of like a nice role reversal in that way. You're right.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see another Ritsuko Masato, episode.
Yeah, I love it. It's a
like,
Ritsuko story.
Yeah, it's a Ritsuko centric story, like even more so than Jet Alone. So
much more so, really.
Yeah.
Though I love a roll in Jet Alone.
We get
So
to
funny.
we get to sort of see Ritsuko, like a glimpse into her past and her history with her mother and the tension there between her and her mom. And her mom is now a supercomputer that is called the Magi system.
Named after the Magi from the Bible, in case no one knows that. And we obviously we get a lot of exposition really quickly in this one bit where we establish the visualization element of the Magi, how they are perceived with the view screen, right, with the 3 squares and each name, Melchior, Casper, and
Balthazar.
Balthazar, listed, so that later on, when it becomes relevant, that what is happening to them, we understand it in terms of what's the like mind to body connect, whatever. Anyway, it's very quick. It's a good way to do exposition. The other bit of exposition we get here quickly is that Maya is Ritsuko's student almost. Ritsuko is the senior computer programmer or whatever, and Maya has a problem, and Ritsuko very quickly solves it. So those are two really important things that we get established in this early scene.
So what's kind of interesting is that as well, with you were mentioning the three magi,
Yeah.
the ones who like visited Jesus. So what I kind of find to be interesting is that Caspar is one of the big ones later in EOE. It's the one that represents the mother mostly.
Nope, it's the woman,
It's the woman, right?
which they say in
Um,
this episode actually.
yeah. So basically, so Caspar represents the woman,
Yeah.
and that gift to Jesus was frankincense, which is kind of interesting
I don't even
because
know what
it's used.
frankincense is.
It's basically a resin that is used in lotions and perfumes, and
Okay.
so it actually helps with aging skin specifically. It's kind of like a anti-aging kind of thing.
Oh.
So it's sort
Hmm.
of interesting that it kind of represents the youthful woman in Naoko,
Yeah.
as
And
that
I mean,
one.
when they say it represents her as a woman, what they mean is as a lover, as basically as a lover. That's more or less what they mean when they say it's
Yeah,
her as a mother.
but I
I don't
think it
remember which one's which otherwise. It's scientist, mother, and woman.
I just think it's kind
And
of interesting,
oh,
that they
absolutely.
chose that one
Do
for
you think there's any significance otherwise? Like, I don't know which one brought gold and which one brought myrrh, but
um I think there's I think it's just an interesting kind of parallel. They seem to do that a lot in Ava, where it's mostly like things are not one to one with biblical sort of stuff, but
mhm,
there is a lot of connections and tying. And so
yeah.
I think it's interesting to have that one be chosen for something that's like because perfume and lotion and like anti-aging just feels like it kind of works really well with
It's
representing.
also a major theme of the
Yeah, the whole
Akagi's, so to
instrumentality
speak.
project is kind of like
Well,
about.
that too, but
Yeah,
very even more specifically about Ritsuko and Naoka, them growing older, them wanting to be relevant. Like they almost they almost give up their youth in pursuit of their higher pursuit, their scientific
right.
pursuits.
Yeah, there's the
Though I guess Naoka
sacrifice.
was married at some point, or at least something, because she has a daughter. So
She has a daughter. She doesn't have a husband, and she got her daughter into science like pretty immediately. Like there was a push to not even have a mother-daughter relationship between Ritsuko and Naoko. So I think that is interesting.
yeah,
There's like a deprioritization of like deprioritizing kind of like being
yeah.
anything but a scientist. So
Does Ritsuko says she hated her as a woman? I know that as a mother, doesn't she say like I didn't understand her, or I didn't get her, or I didn't relate to her as a mother at all, but I respected her as a scientist? Is that what she says?
yes.
We just watched this. We're the worst. Um,
You're allowed to
but
cut around all this. I'm just letting you know.
I could. Um, so quickly things go wrong. They're doing a little test. They have the like dummy Avas with the pilots in them, seeing I don't know how Avas operate underwater or whatever the hell's going on. And very quickly everything goes wrong. An angel is breaking through into the nerve. The angel for this episode is named Iruel, and he's the angel of terror, which is interesting. I guess is because he's infiltrating the base. He's a spooky, scary virus. I don't know. I don't really have. I don't know how meaningful this one is.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot about this episode that feels almost like it would be a budget episode, And
Yeah, like a
so,
bottle show.
like a bottleneck episode type of thing where if this
Hmm.
was in live action, it would totally be one of those where they made this episode to save money for the other
Oh, like, oh
episodes.
man, we can't have the big outdoor sets. They just hang out in the Nerve headquarters for a whole episode.
Yeah, and they create tension out of basically nothing. It's just people screaming and running around. So I think it's but I think it's cool. it's all animated, so it definitely involved work to create this type of episode. And
Hmm.
but it is sort of paying homage to that. And I don't know if there's an angel that in biblical lore that would work as a parallel to a virus in that way.
The
I don't even know if
angel
they
of
understood the
disease.
concept.
I don't know if there is an angel of disease or not. Maybe the angel of terror is the angel of disease. Maybe that's what it's known for.
Yeah, maybe it's
Who
blight or
knows?
something. I don't know.
I'm
But
not an expert on Hebrew angel lore. I just look it up on the Evangelion wiki before we record.
don't say that. That's
I mean, I am an expert in Hebrew angel lore. Ask me anything.
uh um okay, so what's really notable about this episode, I think, uh is just like the fact that it is able to build tension from very little. It uses
Hmm.
exposition and cuts to create kind of dramatic tension in that sort of like almost like Star Wars Episode 4 type of way, where they kind of just generate it by the way it's cut and the music and the characters and the dialogue. And by establishing what the stakes are early through exposition, it doesn't have to really have a flashy action set piece for this episode to still feel like there's a lot happening and a lot going on.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's a good episode to develop Ritsuko and sort of show her friendship with Misato some more, which is always nice and cool. And you get a little bit of the bridge bunnies as well here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Particularly Maya. By the way, I just want to correct myself really fast. Sasuke did not rate this episode. I don't know why I thought he did, but he did not.
Who wrote this episode?
It was Mitsuo Iso, and this is his only episode. He wrote it with Ano though, so Mitsuo Iso is a animator on the show, and he did some key animation for the.
He's a really notable animator. This guy, I'm pretty sure, is responsible for the EOE Asuka fight, like the whole, yeah,
Oh, I think you're
yeah.
right.
He's the guy that also did the any kind of like naturalistic kind of looking Ava stuff. So later on in episode 19,
He
when
did key animation for episodes 119 and
yeah, in
21.
episode 19, Mitsuo Iso did the part where Ava Unit 1 kind of awakens and then devours Zeruel. We'll get there later, but he's just very well known for kind of
Right.
naturalistic movements for like Ava's as giant people more than anything is the type of animation he does. He's a
Oh, he worked on Cow.
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
he worked on Cowboy Bebop and um
Specifically the movie, which is like breathtakingly
yes,
animated.
and Fooly Cooley and a couple of other things. He's a very, very, very notable animator. He recently directed a show called Orbital Children on Netflix, which I did watch. That was yeah,
Okay.
it's not a very good show, but it's actually well animated. So he's a good animation director. He
Yeah.
did Deno Coil as well, which is a better show. He directed that one. But yeah,
Right.
so
Yes. And he did this episode,
yes.
which is pretty well written. It was so well written, I thought it was Akio Satsukawa, who's my favorite writer on the show. So there's that.
Compliments to Mitsuo Iso. But yeah.
Yes.
Anything else you want to say about this, or are we ready to move on?
Well, we have to mention the most iconic
Oh,
thing about the
how could I
episode,
forget?
which is the fact that Kaji climbs a ladder, jumps over a gap, and then does a forward roll, and then never appears in the episode again after.
Yeah, Kaji
That's the best part. Is he never comes back.
Kaji in an iconic scene decides to dive roll off an elevator. Absolutely breathtaking, amazing, incredible. So that was there to just show Kaji being a stealth master, sneaky man. And he's going around Nerve. He's looking for things. He's taking names. Yeah. So that's a. There's no payoff to that here, but in the broader scope of the show, it definitely is relevant. So
It's just he's up to no good.
yes.
The other thing I wanted to mention is a lot of sort of really iconic reused shots that you see a couple of times in 19 and 24. Anytime things are like going haywire in the Nerve headquarters and the Makoto, which is the guy with the glasses, like him sort of like spinning and looking over his shoulder, and he looks all dramatic. That shot, I think, is from somewhere in this episode. The shot of Shigeru Aoba, who's the guy with the long hair, him just like looking really intensely at the
My
camera.
God, it's just
They reused
disappeared.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that line, that bit. No one's gonna know what we're talking about, but in the original dub, uh, Jason Lee has a line where he says, "My God, it just disappeared," and it's that
Yeah,
shot.
in
They use
episode
that for that
24.
shot. Yeah.
The computer that was reanimated for EOE with the Magi kind of going, yeah, it's from this episode too, so kind of fun.
I think the shot of Ritsuko with her like really weird bent hand on Maya's chair, looking over her shoulder. I think that's from
It's
this
either from this
episode.
one or episode 2 or something with the, but anyway, yeah, it's
Oh, it might be from even
yeah.
earlier. You're right.
Um,
I think that one's from earlier.
but
Yeah.
there's a lot of animation that gets used here, and I actually don't mind that animation gets reused. For me, what's bad is when like plot beats start to repeat themselves, when like there are plot elements that are reused, or like character arcs that repeat or something like that. That's really the concern I have. I don't find animation that repeats to be an issue personally. I know there's a lot of people in the anime community who do care a lot about that, and it could be distracting. But I think to in casual or average viewer, it's not very noticeable. And at least for me, like I don't think Ava has like all the plot elements are generally pushing things forward in new directions, or the angels are demonstrating something new in the character dynamics. So I don't really mind that the animation gets reused because the plot elements don't really. So
It's also not action scenes or anything. They're not reusing action sequences, and it's also short shots. It's not entire sequences or anything. It's literally just, oh, Ritsuko has to say something dramatic in the command
yeah.
room. Like, why not just use the same animation? It's really not.
It's also something Ano
opinion,
just likes to do stylistically across his body of work, including his live action films. He'll have similar shots like very frequently. There'll be new shots, yeah, but they are deliberately kind of echoing things. It's just something he likes doing. That's the case in EOE as well, where EOE has a lot of shots that are completely reanimated. They're completely reanimated, new aspect ratio, higher quality, more on model, but it's still the same types of shots from the original show, and it's just a stylistic choice at that point.
He does it in Rebuild too, actually.
Yeah, he does. So it doesn't really, yeah, it's just something Ano does, honestly. And he's like, hey, I mean, if I could save money doing it, then hell yeah. But
yeah, that bit with the Magi, though, it makes you think of that moment. It makes you, I mean, because EOE especially is almost like the closing chapter of the book, and it kind of calls back to almost every single episode as you go. Is it EOE that has the? No, I think it's 24 where it cuts through every single angel and just displays their names. I think it's that.
There's a scene in EOE during instrumentality where it goes through the episode titles, but and it shows like.
Oh no, I think you're right. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So it's recapping the whole thing. That's the point. Speaking of recapping, I didn't even plan that segue, and it's perfect.
Yeah, the next episode, episode 14, is pretty infamous for being one of the episodes the Ava fandom doesn't like as much, because it is just mostly, well, it's not mostly, but there's a good 10 minutes worth of recap at the start.
It's literally half the episode, because I think the recap stops at the mid commercial.
Yeah, that would be right, because 24 minutes plus opening and ending. Then it would be like half. Yeah. And they sort of try to frame it as Seele going over their documents. It's like, what do we know? And
yeah, because we don't see anything recapped that Seele doesn't know about, because Gendo hid the previous episode. He hid everything that happened in that episode from them, but they know it happened anyway. So he didn't do a very good job. But
they mentioned that it's like there's a death penalty for lying to them, which I think is pretty funny, because Gendo, I don't know why Gendo would hide that there was the virus, angel. I get that he would hide other things, but but that one,
I don't know why he was like, wait, are you saying you weren't attacked by an angel? No, we were attacked by 13 other angels, but not that one. Like, what? Who cares?
I think it matters because he's trying to Gendo is trying to throw off Sele from the fact that they've defeated a certain amount of angels, because in the Dead Sea Scrolls it says like after X amount of angels the apocalypse will happen, and I think if Gendo throws
Yeah, that never comes back,
if he
though.
throws them off by one number, then he can probably initiate it without them knowing, because they think that, oh, we have one angel left.
Maybe.
I don't know. That's my best guess as to why he'd lie.
Sure, it just never comes back in the story because they know how many angels are.
Yeah, well,
Because they're the ones counting them down. I think in episode 24, they're like, all but one.
yeah. Anyway, so
Anyway, yeah, and then we have this weird Ray monologue, which is very
Ray's
strange.
just talking about her character. She's saying things like, I am like a mountain. I move very slowly, but there is character development, I swear, because like a mountain, I am moving.
I swear.
Like,
Even though I haven't done anything for about 10 episodes, I swear I'm very important. I'm not just the mascot. I'm just not just on the cover of the DVD. I swear.
are you saying that she's the pen of the characters that are human?
No. What does that even mean? Is Pen the mascot? He's not even in the marketing.
I would argue Pen is the Dibby of the show. So a Dibby is essentially a kooky animal character sidekick that is is just.
I don't know what the point of Pen is. He's in like 4 scenes in the whole show.
He adds a some nice comedy relief, yes.
He's very important. If we can get Pen working,
We can get Pen working. He's the key to all this. Yeah.
he's the key to everything.
If we can get
He's so important that he's not in the rebuilds.
if we can get Ray working, well, in the rebuilds he does appear to have had procreated, because there's a lot of penguins randomly kind of in the area, but yeah,
Okay, I don't remember that.
everyone gets laid in the final movie. But anyway,
Anyway,
so
the other really important thing from this episode is when Unit Zero goes berserk.
yes, Unit Zero goes berserk and attacks Ray
Maybe.
because Shinji's in Unit Zero, and then Unit Zero goes crazy and decides to kill Ray. Is that right?
Shinji's in the unit, and then the unit goes berserk, and it starts punching the glass, where basically all the other main characters are, except Gendo, I think, and the other pilots. So it could be after anybody, but I think the focus is on Ray, because Ray doesn't move out of the way, and she just kind of stands there. But then later on, Ritsuko says, "There's no doubt in my mind, Unit Zero was trying to kill me."
Right. So the idea
But that's just her opinion. That's just like her opinion, man. So
the idea is that there is a soul inside of each Ava unit, and the soul can manifest the unit and go crazy, trying to essentially enact its own will. And in this case, a lot of the fans theorize that Ray 1's soul is inside of it, which is the Ray before the Ray that we know. Because the Ray that we know is Ray 2, the second one.
Yep.
And the first Ray was killed by Ritsuko's mother, Naoko Akagi.
Yep.
And so it is theorized that, you know, she's after Ritsuko because she looks like her mother, and Ray 1 is, basically out for revenge and using this opportunity to try and kill her or Ray, because Ray is another clone of her, and maybe she doesn't like that. I don't know, but whatever.
This part of the show, I think, is when they kind of lost the lead a little bit, and they don't know quite what they're doing, but
Yeah,
that's fine.
this
I was gonna say that theory doesn't make a ton of sense to me that it's Ray 1 because the Rays all share one soul and it keeps moving from Ray to Ray. So I don't know how they did a contact because it's a they call it a contact experiment, I think, when they make an Evangelion. And the other theory is about Nauka, which I think has been debunked or something. But Nauka's essence or something is in the Magi system because they mention in that episode that the Magi were created using the same technology and the same process as the Evangelions. So I don't know. I don't think Ano really knows personally, but there we go.
It apparently has been confirmed in side products, like some PSP game or something, that it's Ray 1. Uh, it doesn't really super matter.
Okay.
Yeah, it's...
It doesn't really matter. That makes no sense to me, but okay.
Who
It doesn't
cares
really
what's in
matter.
Ava Unit 0? Who
is-
cares? But
Also, Ava Unit 0 never does anything. It's the least important thing in the whole show. It does something good like episode 5, and then it never... Oh, no, that's not true. That's not true. It does stuff in other episodes, but not very much.
it gets seismic slammed by Ava Unit 5 later.
What, in
No,
the rebuild?
in episode like...
Ava Unit... Oh, you mean
Yeah,
Ava Unit 4?
I mean Ava Unit 4. I'm out of it today, man.
Come on. I expect
I
better.
know I'm supposed to be...
From the premier YouTube Evangelion
I'm supposed to be
fan.
like a mega fan of this, and I guess at one point I was, but yeah, it's been a long time since I did the deep dives into the lores and things like that, so I'm a bit rusty on my Ava knowledge. I'll get back in the swing of things, you know.
Eventually.
Yeah.
New Evangelion YouTube videos every week.
Maybe one more Ava YouTube video.
Hour-long deep dives. But we've run out of material, so now it's going to just be... Was Gendo's grandfather the inventor of oatmeal or something like that?
I think he invented skis, actually.
My. Okay, then.
Are we ready to talk about the next episode, or...
No, there's one more thing. Oh, the Spirit of Longinus. And then at the end, again, Fusey's just like sitting around bitching about, or whining about, Fusey's sitting around whining about the old senile old men on Sealay. They just, all they're good for is complaining. How dare they? And then Gendo just mentions that, oh yes, everything is proceeding well in all of our plans, and then he lists off a bunch of nonsensical, weird plans that we don't know much about, and says, the Spear of Longinus, of course, Rei is taking care of that. So really, all that really establishes is that Gendo really trusts Rei, and he'll have her do these sort of odd arcane jobs that Shinji knows nothing about, that Masato doesn't even know anything about.
We don't know about until much, much later. But basically,
and that we don't know it.
Rei is
True.
taking that Spear of Longinus, or Lance of Longinus, if you want to be old school about it. And she's stabbing Lilith.
I think the original Hebrew is, I don't know.
I think it's a spear. But anyway, so Spear of Longinus.
Well, it would be a Hebrew word, but anyway.
No, I'm just saying it translates more to like spear than a lance. Like lances
probably.
weren't a thing until medieval times, where with jousting and stuff. So, anyway. Yeah.
But anyway.
The Lance of Longinus sounds way cooler. Anyway, so Rei is down in Terminal Dogma, and she's sealing away Lilith by using the spear to kind of prevent it from growing anymore. Because it sort of wants to grow things out into Ava units. And
I guess.
yes. Ava Unit 1 was derived from it, and it kind of grew from its legs. I'm pretty sure is what the lore is for that. So they're preventing it from creating a new Ava unit potentially. So,
or to at least keep
keep it under control.
They don't want another impact to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, well, we'll talk about that later. So finally, our main episode for today is going to be the one episode that the one episode in 2K's one episode is going to be those women longed for the touch of others and thus invited their
Thusly.
kisses. Netflix calls it Lies in Silence, but I like those women longed for the touch of others and thus invited their kisses a lot better as a title. Much more
Yeah,
memorable.
it's a mouthful in a good way. And as we mentioned before, this episode doesn't really have any action. It's all character driven, which is why it's one of my favorite episodes. Everything has to do with domestic problems and relationships, and it really doesn't have any.
There's not even really problems in this episode.
Not really. It's more of like, okay, well, the problem is, Shinji needs to go meet with his father and try and form a connection there, and he fails to form a connection halfway through the episode, and then tries to form a new connection with Asuka, and then that kind of fails as well. So it's sort of
so let's go back to kind of what we used to do when we did the first couple episodes of this, where we would go through what's the rising action, what's the call to action, what's the inciting incident. So what's the inciting incident of this episode?
So I'd say there's actually, in terms of the structure of it, there's a few kind of inciting incidents for each character. So we have Asuka, who we open up with. Kaji, the problem is established that Kaji is not responding to her. He's ghosting her. He's blocking her from the DMs. Okay. And she doesn't like that. And
leaving her on red, damn it.
She doesn't like that. She wants to form a bond with him. And, but then like Hikari comes up and it's just like, girl, I need to hook you up with someone your own age, girl. 'Cause he'd be way too old for you. And so that's kind of her problem being established and the inciting incident there. And then Shinji, I would argue, is like staring at Rei, because we learn a little bit later on that he's motivated by the fact that he needs to go visit his father and doesn't really know how to connect with his dad, and so is just trying to he's wondering how to approach Rei, and he's being reminded of his mother, and that kind of connects with the whole grave that he's about to go visit with his dad, with his mom. And so it's kind of just like Shinji's failing to form bonds throughout this whole episode, where at first he tries to connect with Rei, and then she kind of just like throws him flat on his butt during this elevator exchange. And then he fails to connect with his dad, and then he fails to connect with Asuka, and so this isn't a good episode for Shinji. And then Misato's kind of inciting incident, because I would argue that more than any other episode, this is operating much in a similar structure to Western TV, where there's like an A plot, a B plot, C plot. So I'd say like, we could argue the A plot is like Misato's plot line, where she has to go attend a wedding. And then B plot is like Shinji has to go meet with his dad. And then like C plot is like Asuka's gotta try and get Kaji to pay attention to her and stuff like that. So,
or she wants him to.
And so we're I would say we're structuring it based off of these different plot threads and kind of how they intertwine throughout the episode.
Yeah. It is difficult because I don't think there is a real strong A plot. I'd argue it's larger than the Misato bit, because that's the one that goes through the whole episode, whereas like the Shinji plot's kind of over by the end of the first act, and then the Asuka Shinji story starts there. Like that's almost like segmented kind of, because the scenes of Asuka kissing Shinji don't really have a lot to do with the Gendo Shinji stuff going on earlier in the episode.
I think it does, in the sense that Shinji wants to at least get some kind of human or personal connection from someone, and Asuka's looking for that too through Kaji, and so it's kind of like playing into those plot lines and tying them together, where it's just like
maybe in the grander scheme of things, but in this story I don't know if they're related.
But I think it's interesting because it does remind me of something more of like a Breaking Bad or a Game of Thrones, where you have these various plot threads that are kind of weaving together into this like tapestry. So you'll cut between like Jaime Lannister and Tyrion and Jon Snow, and those will all have different kind of conflicts going on. But this one's kind of like that, but really, really low stakes the whole time.
Yeah, it's not the red wedding. It's the it's the Japanese wedding. And it's just a wedding. Can you imagine that? It's like, oh my god, it's the red wedding. Why is it called the red wedding? Oh, because the bride's wearing red.
Right.
Oh, okay. That was just the whole thing.
um
But there's a lot of character stuff going on at that wedding. Really, we get a lot more of a stronger sense of what Masato. Because this is really the episode where Masato and Kaji reconcile. This is where they get back together.
yeah, their relationship is mended after she's been pushing him away and rejecting him, or playing hard to get, really, the whole time. There's a
Yeah, I don't know if she's playing hard to get necessarily, but yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. She's resistant to get back together with him, even though she has genuine affection and feelings for him, and ultimately she does love him.
She loves him, but she's afraid of what that means because of how similar he is to.
Yeah, she's been looking for her father, and
Yeah.
that scares her, which is odd. But
It's very Freudian.
Yeah.
It's just like Electra complex AF. But this has some of my favorite moments in the whole series. Like the part with Kaji and Misato is having this freak out moment, and then he kisses her, and there's that "Fly Me to the Moon" on the piano that comes in. It's such a beautiful scene.
if you're watching it on the old DVD,
Yes, if you're watching on Netflix, you're not gonna have "Fly Me to the Moon" there, which I think is the this and the part where she's on the answering machine later. And there's "Fly Me to the Moon." The absence of "Fly Me to the Moon" is most felt in those two scenes. So,
yeah,
because that was supposed to tie back into this scene,
yeah, absolutely, 100%. I like the intensity and how adult the conversation is between Kaji and Masato, and how messy it is. Because a lot of people would be like, "Oh, it's toxic, it's problematic," and it is. It absolutely is that they're talking this way, and that he's kind of forcing himself on her a little bit. It's so complicated. I wouldn't say that's totally true, but that's happening a little bit. And she's drunk out of her mind, and he's probably drunk too. And the scene ends with her vomiting in an alley, and yeah, and it's just a lot of. She can't really trust him either. We find out by the end of this episode. She can't really believe what he says because he's always lying. He's a double agent. And I think that's a big part of this episode.
Yeah, him being it sort of opens actually with him being a sneaky agent person, getting information from this cat lady.
It all comes back to the forward flip.
Yeah, it all really, yeah, exactly. The dive roll. He's dive rolling on Misato's relationship, and she doesn't know how to feel about that. Is it authentic, or is it a role? I don't. He's putting on a
Did you
role.
really love me, or was it just a role you were hired to play? They don't say that in the episode, thankfully.
Yeah, exactly, and so. I think she is sort of aware that he's up to something, and does that mean that his feelings for her are authentic, or is he just BSing? And I don't know if she can. Yeah, you're right about that trust issue there.
It's a little bit of a trust issue, but I think it's actually resolved at the end of the episode. Having said that, I think when she confronts him about it, I think he actually is rather earnest with her in that moment. So I'm totally contradicting what I just said, but I didn't think it through properly, I guess.
Well, another scene I really like is the scene where Shinji confronts his father at the graveyard, because it is really authentic, where there's obviously like a lot of tension that Shinji has with his dad, and it doesn't go disastrously, but it doesn't go well. It's kind of disappointing in a real and genuine an authentic way.
I think in the context of the show and for Shinji, it did go well. I think Shinji thinks that went well. That was like a good interaction.
It's hard to say because
his father didn't tell him to get lost.
Yeah,
because he spends the rest of the episode pretty happy. He's not like upset or anything. He's pretty content with himself.
He basically, I read that as sort of like a fail to connect because of the way the cinematography is done, where he says, oh, I had this really great time. And he's just like, sure, buddy. And then he takes off in a helicopter, like a futuristic space shuttle thing.
Space
Yes.
copter, yeah. And Rich,
And and
not
and
Ritzko,
then
Raisin, the
and then we get
space
this really
copter.
vulnerable shot of just like Shinji looking up at it, and it's this long shot from up high, and
Yeah.
his shadow is paralleling that of the graves and things like that. It just doesn't read as like very happy at the very end.
That's a happy interaction in the Akari household. We went to a grave. I asked him some questions. He didn't tell me to get lost. And then he flew away in his space copter. It was the greatest interaction me and my father have ever had. Okay?
I guess it's better than being, left at the train station, but, being left at the graveyard instead.
Shinji's just looking at the grave and says, "Do you have any pictures of mom? Dad? Dad?" And then the space copter's just taking away. He's still at the grave. Say goodbye.
I don't even know what he's doing to get, like, the thing is, how's he getting back home, It's just like, Dad.
I don't know. That's true. She just abandoned him in the middle of this, like, cubic mile. I mean, maybe, like, Masato. No, Masato's not coming by later.
She's at the
But maybe,
wedding.
like, the nerve bodyguards are coming by later in, like, a car or something
She
to
just
take him
has
home.
to take the fucking subway. um, but anyway, the next.
What does he actually say, though? What does Gendo actually say when he says, "I had a nice time the other day"? Doesn't he just say, like, "Soul"?
Yeah, he's like, I see. He says, I see, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, is that right? Okay.
It was the nicest thing my father had ever said to me.
Following that up, we get the cello scene, which is, I think, the most significant and important scene for Shinji's character in the
Yep.
in the first 2/3 of the show, I would say, because he's playing this cello. Asuka comes in, she compliments him, which is really actually, which is cool. Like,
really
that's the
nicely.
thing, is that Asuka's usually painted by the community as this terrible shrew of sorts, and
Yeah.
she kind of is sometimes, but there are moments.
She's just very German, honestly. We know German people. We know.
You're not wrong. But she actually recognizes that he's talented at this thing, and can do that, and is impressed with him, and is willing to actually sort of praise someone else, which is crazy because she's always looking for praise, and so is he, and
Yeah.
it's just nice that these two characters, or this character, can put aside her pride for 1 second and actually compliment another person. It humanizes her, and it makes them it humanizes her, and it makes them likable, I think, or more likable. And then Shinji, she asks, oh, how long have you been playing the cello? And he's been saying, I used to play it when I was a kid. But, it's, and she asks him why he plays it. Like, why do you play the cello? And he says, because nobody.
Well, he says, "I don't really like it, though." And she says, "If you don't like it, why do you keep playing it?" And then he
Because
says,
nobody
"No one
told me to stop. Exactly. And that has
Yeah.
a broader implication in terms of what motivates him as a character. He's extremely subservient, extremely submissive, and he does things that he doesn't like doing, aka piloting Ava, for the sake of just like, because he's so confused as to what to do, and so helpless in some ways, that it's easier to just listen to and do things that other people expect of him than take matters into his own hands and actually do something that he wants to do, which has to do with his like bigger character arc. In the whole series, like the series as a whole, is largely about Shinji taking charge and deciding to have the agency to stop instrumentality. Kind of funny word, instrumentality, as well, considering he's playing an instrument.
Oh. This is also like the midpoint
Yes.
of the show, really. This is just before everything goes really badly. So I'd say this is almost, in a way, this is kind of the end of part one, a little bit.
Things are going to
Because this is
take a dark turn from
Or no,
here
sorry.
on out.
this is the end of our act 2, I'd say, more, because this is when everything's really nice. That's why I was trying to argue that that graveyard scene is supposed to be a positive scene. That this is when everything's going really well in Shinji's life. He's starting to have a relationship with his father. He lives in a home with 2 sexy ladies. Well, he lives in a home with 2 girls that he likes, that he has a connection with. He has, things are going well in his life. He's being praised. Everything is kind of looking up Shinji a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, in spite of the things that do go wrong for him in this episode, like I would say the kiss scene definitely goes wrong between him and Asuka.
Well, I think that's when
But
things start to sour, I think, a
yeah,
little bit.
they definitely, it's still ultimately okay. Like things are stable. And then episode 16 and onward is just everything falling apart from here on out. Yeah.
16 is when everything starts to fall apart. Shinji starts feeling good about himself, and then everything goes wrong.
So we have that scene with Kaji and Misato kissing, and then we follow that up immediately with a scene of Shinji and Asuka kissing, which is
Other way around, but yeah.
no. I'm in the episode. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, I had it. Oh, yeah. Shoot. Okay, sorry.
I have the episode up, but basically, so you have that really nice parallel, like narrative wise, where you have those 2 plot threads kind of back to back in that way. Like Misato finds comfort in Kaji, and there is a connection that is formed there, and then Asuka and Shinji try to do the same thing, and Asuka is just like, ew, gross, you're a terrible kisser, this is the worst day of my life.
Yeah. There's also a moment earlier, and I remembered what it was, and I don't remember where it is, but there's a moment where I remembered what the question was. Asuka asked Misato, you bought a new dress. Did you buy something for Kaji? Did you buy something that Kaji would like? And she says, no, I don't do that anymore. And I think subtly, that was Asuka asking Misato, are you still into Kaji? Are you guys still dating? That was her, like, it's weird for Asuka to not be direct, but that was her sort of subtle way of asking that.
Yeah.
I don't know where that is in the episode because I couldn't find it when we were looking at the episode earlier, but I know it's in there somewhere. And then later, after all these scenes,
I'm pretty sure that's 7 minutes
when
in,
she
by
smells
the way.
that.
That's 7
I'm
minutes
sorry?
in.
Oh, it is in the episode. Okay, good. Where she smells the lavender perfume, which they've established is almost a metaphor for like being a woman, being an adult, being sexual. She smells it on Kaji, implying that, oh, they were together tonight.
Yeah, they got really close.
They spent most of their time with Misato vomiting in an alley.
But I think Asuka's assuming that they got intimate there, and that definitely
And she's kind of right.
definitely puts her off, and she gets really angry with Shinji. She takes it out on him after that, and which just like crushes him a little more, especially after their failure to like have a nice moment
after
together.
the kiss. I don't know how he feels about that kiss because it wasn't something he really wanted.
Well,
he
was being competitive about it, right? Where she was just like, I bet you couldn't kiss me good or whatever, and then he was like, well, here I come, so I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And because I'm a man, and I think that this scene is about
men kiss women.
Is about demasculating him.
Sorry.
I think it's yeah. There are some crazy people out there who think that they banged actually after this, and that just makes no sense to me. But there's a theory that like during this episode, like after this episode, they decided to get intimate as well, and everything about this is about demasculating Shinji, making him feel bad for not being a man.
Emasculating.
Yeah, or like emasculating Shinji, making him feel bad as a man, and Asuka's, there's no way, especially after how upset she is about Kaji rejecting her. At least she perceives it that way. She wouldn't just like jump into Shinji's bed. So that would be really weird.
Yeah, and she's not available. That's the other thing. She's very unavailable. Yeah. She's emotionally unavailable, and she's a 14-year-old girl. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's healthy.
I just think it's really kooky that there are fans that theorize that. That's like a pretty popular theory. But I just don't
I
see
do think
it.
it's interesting that Asuka finds Shinji's cello playing sexy. Kind of. That's kind of the inference here. That
I
she's
think
like,
that's why
wow,
she
you play the cello
I
really well,
I think that's why she
Shinji.
even humored the idea of kissing him, you know.
Yeah,
It's be
she's curious about
it's
him.
because it's like, well, there is actually things I don't know about him, and he is talented, you know, at the maybe he can meet me
Hmm.
on my level in that way. Uh Besides just being an
And maybe
Ava
she's
pilot.
disappointed about her
Yeah.
date.
And she is disappointed about her date that she went on with Hikari's brother. Is that right?
Her friend,
Yeah, it's
something,
someone's she hooked up
somebody.
with
He's hot. She said he's hot,
yeah.
but I guess he's boring.
Whereas like Shinji's an Ava pilot, he's more of somebody interesting, I guess. Potentially.
Yes, I think that yeah, he's a musician.
He's an
Um,
artist. I didn't know he was an
he's an
artist.
artist.
He can play cello suite number 5 like a god. No, I don't know.
Then we have the final scene, which I think is really cool, is because you don't expect this scene. The episode's kind of over, and then we get this scene where Kaji is breaking into the chamber of. Is it the chamber of? No, it's not the chamber of Guff. Is it just Terminal
Terminal
Dogma?
dogma. Yeah.
What? Yeah, Terminal
Terminal or
Dogma.
central dogma.
He's breaking into
Whatever.
Central Dogma, whatever it's called. Anyway, like Lilith's house. He's breaking into Lilith's house,
Knocking on the
and
door. Knocking on heaven's door.
he's
Yeah.
knocking on heaven's door. Uh, he's and he's about to open the door when Masato pops up behind him with a gun. He's got a gun pointed at his head and says, I know what you've been up to. You shouldn't have underestimated me. I know you're a double agent. I know you're a spy. I know you're working for the Japanese government. And it's going to get you killed." And then Kaji just kind of shrugs and goes like, "No, nah." Like, Kaji is so sure that Nerve is not going to kill him, which I think is true. I don't think Nerve is the one that ended up doing him in. I don't think they really cared about him that
Nerve
much.
themselves, probably not. No. But I think
No.
Sele, the larger organization. Yeah.
Yeah, Sele or the government, I think was. I mean, that's another episode. We'll talk about that
Um,
episode later, but
But okay, so then we see Lilith with the spear that we saw in the previous episode, kind of. Uh,
yeah. Yeah, after they have their tit for tat little conversation where she says, she's like, "How's your head? How's your hangover?" And she says, "It's fine now." Saying she's got a clear head. It's the morning, and I think this is kind of him almost opening up to her, and he reveals, like, he's like, "I'm so sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I lied to you. It's part of my job or whatever." And then he says, "But you know what? Gendo and Ritsuko have been lying to you too, and here's the proof." And he shows her Lilith.
yeah, and she was unaware about Lilith's existence, and from here on out, she's gonna get kind of really suspicious about Nerve and the greater goings on there, because she was not privy to any of this, and like, why do they have an angel here? They need it for instrumentality, but she doesn't even know about instrumentality or like what the purpose is of keeping this angel alive, because this angel is a huge risk factor. It's like what the
She doesn't even know anything about
yeah.
the Avas.
So
She doesn't know what the Avas are. She thinks they're
it's
robots.
more than Shinji. We learn about the larger world through Misato as a deuteragonist. So
Yes, and this is the beginning of that because she's really the one who investigates that
yeah,
stuff and explains it.
which is cool. I like that. It adds like a
I like
it
that too.
adds like there's a Cthulian element to Evangelion, and an unknowability, and kind of like trying to uncover the what is unknowable and the greater goings on, and it's cool to be able to get glimpses into that. It makes you want to investigate as well when Misato is doing that, so it's cool.
It, it's also I love that. I love that aspect of Evangelion, and it's more apparent in other episodes. But where the angels aren't rational, there's nothing rational or logical or deterministic about them. Really, they're just, or maybe they're deterministic, but they're just animals. Basically, they're other extraterrestrial beings that are doing things we can't even comprehend because they don't think like us or act like us,
Yeah, their way
or
of
they're not.
it's like, could you imagine a world populated with a specific species of angel? How would that even what would that even look like? So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, they're just so beyond everything in terms of their physicality too, because they're not celestial in the sense that they're transparent or beyond. They're very physical. They're very physical and almost rubbery in terms of their bodies, and the animators just do such a good job establishing what they're like, I
Yeah.
think.
And that's it for today, unless you have anything else.
That's it for today. I don't really have anything else to add. We covered a lot. Love those who've been along for the touch of others and those invited their kisses. One of my favorite episodes of a TV show ever. Love
Yeah,
it.
it's interesting how it contrasted against one of the worst episodes of the show, which is the episode 14, the last one. So,
Which I don't even know the name of.
those who ignored this episode mostly and just skipped to the after the recap.
Those who looked back on previous episodes and thus invited their perceptions.
Um,
I love it if every episode had that like title. Like,
yeah.
Magma Diver was called That Girl Who Aspired to
Scientifically
heights
spelunk
and
inside of a lava and got burnt for it or
a
whatever.
volcano.
Yeah. So this has been Goat Jesus.
And I'm Alex, and thanks for
Yeah.
listening. And once again, we should have a bonus episode accompanying this episode. So check that out. Subscribe to us on Patreon if that's what you're interested in, and have a great day.
Bye.